don't know me, my name is Ken Anderson. I'm the Executive Director here at the Boys and Girls Club. Today we're going to have a nice in-depth look at the problem that I know you're all aware of in our community with drugs. And we have some great presenters here that see it firsthand every day. All of us in this room really have an opportunity to help out, and we have to work together to find solutions and give people the resources that they need when they have the drug addiction problems, and hopefully we can continue to provide those resources here. At the Boys and Girls Club, we try to make sure every kid that attends each day is safe, has a positive role model or mentor while they're here, and are engaged in the programs that we're offering. Many of our programs that we do offer help to guide those kids to keep them on the right track and helping them continue to make good decisions as they get older. So my hope today is that this presentation is just a start to greater effort to provide more prevention programs and the resources to keep our kids off drugs and making good decisions as they get older, as we all know the challenges in life that we're confronted with. So with that, I'd like to introduce our presenters. These folks see it firsthand every day. They're out there dedicating themselves and their time to making sure our community is safe and that our kids are safe as well. So thank you guys for coming this morning. We appreciate what you do for our community, and with that, please welcome these folks.
As Ken shared, one of the reasons that we really are invested in this, and one of the things I'd like to have you think about and have your mindset around this morning, is how this impacts our community and specifically our youth. Because we need to get upstream on this issue. We've got a current problem that's significant, but we also need to get upstream and make sure we're doing things in our community that are protecting our kids. So with that, and I think about that because I know we've got representation across this room as I scan that you're interacting with our youth every day. And at the Boys and Girls Club, they're doing programming in the morning, after school, during our summer months, around child safety, child betterment. They're really helping these kids build assets. And as a former board member, I really, really appreciate that. And so with that, keep that in mind today as we're walking through this presentation. I'm only going to share a quick couple of minutes, and I'm going to turn it over to Randy, and the part of the program is going to go to Nate, who really sees this on a daily basis and has the information that you really came here to hear and to better understand. So let's talk quick about our five-pillared approach. We have some people that have come together that are very passionate around the issue of our heroin and opiate, and it's been called epidemic, and it is epidemic, not only throughout our community, state, but across our nation. But we as a community need to figure out how we're going to address it. And in that five-pillared approach, and I'll have Randy run into that slide, we break it down into, we're hoping he's going to be able to get to the next slide, frozen up on him. But we talk about a pillared approach, and there's a number of approaches that you'll see in action across our nation, but ours includes a education and prevention piece, which a number of people in this room are very involved in. We also have harm reduction, so we're talking about needle exchange, we're talking about the use of Narcan, we're talking about addressing the diversion of prescription medication that's done wrongfully, illegally. That's harm reduction. Then we're talking about the law enforcement pillar. Law enforcement is going to include those of us in the day-to-day work. It's going to include our district attorney's office, our judges, our judicial system, right? But I'll say that pillar alone needs these other four working because we can't arrest our way out of this situation. It's a part of it. We take it very passionately and personally, but it's not everything. The next pillar is going to be our treatment and rehabilitation pillar. That's the tough one because we really lack resources right now in treatment, in the treatment area, and that's a big focus. That's one of our gaps. And the last is our workplace. So we want to have opportunities, as we do this morning, to get into workplaces, so keep that in mind, and please invite us. We want to be able to talk to individuals in the workplace to be able to help them understand what's going on in our community, what to look for and watch for in their workforce, so they may identify some issues, problems, and be able to help those individuals as well. So those would be our five pillars. We have a task force, if you will, for right now, a lack of a better title, because we're working through what truly we are in vision, mission, and action items. but we've got a group that's come together that is meeting on a monthly basis as a large group, plus our pillared committee areas, and that work is really starting to gain some traction, okay? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our Deputy Chief Randy Johns.
One thing, as we've been learning, the majority of our addictions are coming from opioid prescriptions. Now again, when we're talking opioids, we're talking Percocet, Vicodin, any of the oxys, Oxycontin, oxycodones. So that's where these addictions are coming from, whether they're overprescribed medications, whether they're a lot of them that we're hearing about, a lot of stories we're hearing about are actually younger kids, teenagers that suffer sports injuries or whatever, that are prescribed these drugs. Their brains aren't fully developed yet, and so therefore that addiction is that much stronger and able to consume them. At the Chiefs Conference that Kurt and I attended here a short time ago, I came away with this stat that just, I think it kind of says something about where we're at medically, and something, not to pick on the medical field here, but I think there's a lot of this blame we can throw in their direction. But of all the opioid prescriptions worldwide, what percentage do you feel, or do you believe are written in the United States? 42, 59, 78. It's a trick question, actually. Nate, next slide. 99% of prescriptions, opioid prescriptions worldwide, are written in the United States. So I think you can see where these addictions are starting to come from or forming. So one thing as we've been learning, we've been mostly learning from Nate, which is why he's going to have the majority of our show here this morning, but I've been researching different things, happened to stumble across an HBO documentary entitled Heroin, Cape Cod. I don't know if any of you happen to catch it. It was just on not long ago. But also if you YouTube it, it's an hour and 15 minutes long. It focuses on 8 different addicts in the Cape Cod area. It talks about how they became addicted. Some of them became addicted through prescription meds. They were in accidents. One, I believe, was a sports injury. And, but it follows their lives through, and I just want to cut to that right now. The female that's talking here is one of the addicts that's followed in this documentary, but I thought it was up yet. Okay, I'll just talk about it briefly. But it follows her story, and this little clip here is the beginning of the documentary, but she speaks about the addiction and how much control it has on their lives. So while we talk about it here from a law enforcement standpoint, she is going to speak from the addict standpoint.
Stop it. Not many people seem to believe that. They think that, oh, I can get high once. No, you can't. Let's get real here. You can't. As soon as you get that one rush, you're going, you're chasing. You want that. You want that for the rest of your life. You want that high forever, and you will push everybody out of the way to get it. You don't care. For that one stupid high.
I don't know if you caught that, but you just said, all you care about is that one stupid high. That's what's driving your life. You'll give up your family, you'll give up your friends, your lifestyle for that one high. As more states legalize marijuana, Mexican cartels are replacing lost profits by pushing cheap, potent heroin into new markets. And this just speaks about the cities and small towns that are feeling that effects. And one thing about watching this in Cape Cod, we could change the names, we can change the names of the cities, the towns, and it could be Wisconsin Rapids, it could be Stevens Point, it could be Wausau. This is something that's across the country that everybody's dealing with. With that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
I'm a detective with the Rapids Police Department, and I got promoted almost exactly 2 years ago. When I started law enforcement, I wanted to be a drug cop. Like, that's what I wanted to do. That's why I got into law enforcement, and I'm happy with it. I love doing drugs. I love that my wife loves when I tell people that I do drugs for a living. but this is what I wanted to do, and I really, really enjoy doing it. A lot of my time is spent talking to people who don't want to listen to me. And so when I have an audience of people from our community that come together and they want to learn more about this, it makes my day, it makes my week. You guys are going to be the ones that push us out in the community, and you're going to be able to help us address this problem. Like Kurt said, there's a huge gap in our treatment and our rehabilitation. One of the things that we need to stress and that we need to look at is the prevention end of it. And by getting this message out and letting people know that there is a problem here and that there is something that we can do about it, the next generation hopefully is gonna be better than the last. So if we can have a good impact on the prevention end of it, the law enforcement end is gonna follow through, the treatment process, there's gonna be less demand on the treatment providers. And so the more that we can minimize those things on the back end, the better off we're going to be. And so to get to that kid that wants to start or might start, to address those risk factors, to address the communities that say, this isn't our community, it's not happening here, you're lying to yourself, and that's not going to help anything. We need to address a problem and kind of get it out in the open and rip the Band-Aid off in order to fully and successfully address a problem in our community. So I guess one of the things that I do, I go out and talk to groups, and that's a small portion of what I do. We've recently, thankfully, been added, or been given the benefit of a second drug officer. He just started 2 months ago, and so he's getting up and running, and hopefully there could be 20 of us, and there wouldn't be enough people at our police department specializing in this particular area to have the necessary impact to abate this problem. My role within the police department, I'm assigned drug cases. Occasionally I'll get like burglaries or sexual assaults and things like that. We're all a pretty close-knit team, and so if I can help out, I will. If somebody's not available, then I'll jump in, but my primary objective is the drug investigations. I work with the Central Wisconsin Drug Task Force, which is a large contingency of departments in Central Wisconsin. And by doing that, we can go into other communities. I can go somewhere else and do undercover work there. People from other counties can come to our community and do undercover work here. One of the crowning achievements, I got followed by loss prevention at Walmart a couple weeks ago. And so I knew that I'd really made it as somebody who didn't look like a cop. And then I work with the drug endangered children. I have some friends from Human Services here. And I pester and bother them with my drug complaints, and they've been super beneficial as far as getting us into houses and providing services for the kids that are at the houses. We've had 8-month-old, 2-year-old kids test positive for methamphetamine. We've had kids test positive for THC. That shouldn't be. This isn't a place where a 2-year-old child should test positive for methamphetamine because mom, dad, brother, sister, cousin, whoever are coming to the house and using meth. That kid shouldn't be exposed to that. And so if we can prevent that, that's something that I'm really striving for, but I know it's just part of what we have to do and what we have to deal with on a daily basis. And then, like I said, we assist with major incidents in the city of Wisconsin Rapids. So if there's a shooting or a homicide or an arson or something like that, because of our small numbers, we all pull together and try and work through that. It's really hard without a clicker. So I work with Wisconsin Department of Justice Division of Criminal Investigation. They're a statewide entity. And so I might have a person who drives down to Milwaukee and picks up heroin and brings it back to Wisconsin Rapids. If it's outside of my task force agencies, which are listed below, it's hard for me to follow up on those. And if we can prevent the source from providing heroin to our community, that's going to be beneficial. But in order to do that, we need to have kind of a leapfrogging law enforcement system in place so that we can go down to Milwaukee and we can do controlled buys and we can keep chasing that target until we get to the person where they're supplying our community. As I said, I work with the Central Wisconsin Drug Task Force, so it includes Wood, Portage, Marquette, Adams, Juneau, Waushara, and Wapaka and Green Lake counties. And then also the Marshfield Police Department, Wapaka, Plover, Stevens Point, Berlin, Grand Rapids, and of course our Wisconsin Rapids Police Department. As far as drugs in our community, the things that we address, unfortunately, because of the volume of tips and complaints and things that we have in our community, we're forced a lot of times to triage our investigations. So I might have somebody in high school that's selling $20 bags of marijuana, and while that's something I really want to get to, if I have to take that case versus somebody who's bringing 30 grams a week of heroin into our community, I have to weigh the pros and cons of each case, and I'm always going to take weed cases. I like doing weed cases, but unfortunately they've been pushed to the back burner. And we all know about gateway drugs, and our kids in middle school that are smoking marijuana have a higher potential to be our adults in their 20s and 30s that are using heroin. There's a huge corollary between kids that start smoking at a younger age and then becoming drug abusers in later life. So our kids that are using alcohol and cigarettes, which are socially acceptable to a certain degree, those kids have been shown to be engaged in riskier activity, because a kid that doesn't want to take that risk of getting caught by their parents, getting kicked out of sports, getting punished at school, whatever, those kids are probably going to be more on the straight and narrow path throughout their lives. The kids that steal a pack of smokes from mom when they're in 7th grade, that might be the same kid that steals grandma's Oxycontin when they're in high school. They might be the same kid that steals their mom or dad's checkbook to fund their heroin habit later on in life. So there's a huge correlation between those factors, and that's where I was really, really excited when Kurt asked me to come speak to the Boys and Girls Club, because everybody in here has a vested interest in the youth in our community, and to take the time and find that one kid that if you can prevent them from going down that road, that's going to save thousands and thousands of hours and tons of money down the road. If you can prevent them from becoming an addict, that's going to go so much further than trying to get them through recovery, get them through the legal system, getting them out that they need in order to kick that habit. So if we can prevent that one child, that person might get into a peer group where they can prevent somebody else, and it's just that waterfall effect. And one of the things that I always think of, and it sounds corny, but the story about the person throwing the starfish into the ocean, and the guy comes along and says, you're wasting your time, you're not going to get to all of them. No, but it helps that one. And if that one starfish says, well, so-and-so helped me when I was a kid, and they prevented me from doing this, later on in life, are they going to help the kid? Are they going to be the person that reaches out to their youth community? Are they going to be the person that reaches out to someone in need and helps them, even though they know they can't help everybody? So it's just passing that along. And I go off on tangents, and I apologize. That's why this is a 2-hour presentation into a 30-minute block. So talk a little bit about heroin, which is, it's having a pretty big impact on our community. Opiates in general having a big impact, but going on 9 years ago when I started here, we didn't have heroin on a daily basis. Our patrol officers are finding needles in cars, they're finding bindles of, empty bindles of heroin, grams of heroin, on traffic stops, on domestics, on welfare checks, on all kinds of things. We're having overdoses daily in our community. Not all of them get reported. I went and spoke with the hospital staff probably about 2 months ago. And they're saying on a weekly basis at least, they're getting people dropped off at the hospital, they're overdosing on opiates. And that's, to me, that's not okay. That shows that there's a problem in our community. One of the reasons that it's lucrative to sell heroin in our community. So I can drive down to Milwaukee, Madison, Chicago, and I can pick up a gram of heroin for $75 to $100. I can drive that 2-3 hours north of Wisconsin Rapids. I can sell that same gram without doing anything to it other than driving it up here for $300. So you can make a $200 profit just by taking 6 hours out of your life. So now you're bringing back 10 grams, now you're making a $3,000 profit, and to me, that's where there's money, there's going to be people that are seeking that money. It's a lifestyle that some people get addicted to the lifestyle. They enjoy that hustle, they enjoy doing that activity, living that lifestyle. And so there's the people that are profiting from other people's misery. And then there's the people that are addicted to it that if they don't have their heroin today, they're going to feel sick. They're going to feel violently ill. They're going to have to basically, every waking thought is going to consume their being until they get that next hit. So when you add those two things together, the people that are preying on those people and the existence of those people in our community, it's really a perfect storm for the problem that we're having now. If you take that same gram and you break it down into 10th gram quantities, so if everybody's familiar with a sugar packet that you put in your coffee, I shouldn't say, not the sugar packet, but the sweet and low, that's a gram. So most of those little pink packets you find at a coffee shop are 1 gram quantity. So you can imagine that 1 gram quantity costing $100 in Milwaukee. If you could drive that sugar packet to Wisconsin Rapids and sell it for $200, there's some risk involved in it, but some people are willing to take that risk to make that money. If you break that sugar packet down into 10 parts, now you can sell it for about $50 per packet, and you're making $500, so you're up $425 to $400. Super lucrative. Now you go to your local drugstore and get some Dorman or some Benadryl, and you mix it 50-50. Now you've doubled your quantity of product. You can still sell it for the same price. So now you're taking that $100 gram, you're doubling it, so you're getting 2, and just on and on and on. So one thing that's, I think, causing some of the overdoses and some of the problems, people are becoming more addicted more quickly. The average purity range in the 80s was 3 to 8%. Now we're seeing an average purity rating of 40% in our heroin on the street. So it's a much more addictive, a much higher high than people are getting. And I had an overdose death a year and a half ago. Somebody snorted a third of a bindle, so a third of a tenth of a gram, and they ended up overdosing and dying. So was that heroin really, really good? Was their tolerance really, really low? I don't know. I know that they snorted heroin and that they died. So it doesn't take much. I'm going to do the Carol Burnett thing and tug in my ear.
Hey, sorry to interrupt.
Yep.
Somebody, whoever has black Jeep Laredo, the alarm is going off right now.
With the heroin in our community, there's fewer social stigmas. We've got boyfriends shooting up girlfriends for their first time without their knowledge. We've got girlfriends shooting up boyfriends and other friends, and they're like, oh, you like smoking weed? Cool. Would you like to get 10 times higher than that? Would you like to have a rush, an intense, euphoric high that's going to be better than anything you've ever had? Well, yeah, that sounds cool. Who wouldn't want that? Well, just close your eyes and turn your head and I'll poke you with this. And people are getting addicted. They're trying it once, and that's that risk behavior that we have in our youth. Those people are going to be the ones who are going to be like, well, I'll try it once. Because it's not going to happen to me. I'm not going to get addicted. I'm not going to fall out. I'm not going to die. I'm not going to steal my mom's checkbook. I'm not going to break into my neighbor's garage and steal their garment and their phones and stuff out of their cars. That's not going to happen to me because I'm in control of what I do. So they try it once, and then that path starts, and before they know it, they've been an addict for 1.5 years, 2 years. They've been in and out of jail for all kinds of burglaries and thefts and things like that. It all started with that one use. If we can keep people from having that first use, obviously we're going to be so much further ahead. And that's, Kurt keeps talking about trying to get upstream. I don't know how far upstream we have to get. We've got people in our middle schools, I apologize, people in our junior highs that are using heroin. So how far upstream do we have to get? I mean, do we have to start doing drug presentations up at the birthing center so that the kids, when they come out, that they know that they're not supposed to use it? And I don't know what the right answer to that is, but it's going to take people like everybody in this room to get upstream and get that message across that that first use could be the first use in a long line of uses, and it's going to be the first step in becoming an addict. Typically in Rapids, they're sold in foil bindles. When I first started doing this 2 years ago, we were chasing around town trying to find bindles of heroin. We were trying to find informants who would get us bindles of heroin from other dealers. Now we're buying grams. We're buying 8 balls, which is like about 3.5 grams. We did an investigation in 2014, I'll talk about later. We ended up getting 70 plus grams off a guy that was going down Milwaukee once a week. So 70 grams of heroin into our community by one person every week. So the problem's getting worse. When I first started, we were buying grams of heroin. If we could get a gram, it was $300 to $350. Now we're buying grams for $225 to $250. So the supply and demand, if I'm selling my heroin for $300 a gram and this person over here can sell it for $275, where is everybody gonna go? You know, and to an extent, heroin's heroin. So if it's good from this guy today, it'll be good from this guy tomorrow. If it looks the same, smells the same, acts the same, I might as well get it from this person for $25 less because that's more heroin than I can get. So now we're down to $225, $250. If we're buying in bulk, we can get grams down to $180, $150 sometimes. So to me, that's shocking that our prices have fallen that much. If the price of crude oil dropped that much in a 2-year period, you know, what would our economy look like? There'd be a gas station on every corner, you couldn't get rid of this stuff. But at this point, because of the price, because of the availability, it's not hard to find, and people are finding their fix every day. So it can be smoked, it can be injected, it can be snorted. Typically users will start out snorting, and then because they're getting more bang for their buck by injecting, a lot of people will progress to that injection. I kind of relate it to whether you drink on a regular basis or not, if you enjoy a beer, whatever. If everybody in this room took a shot of Jack Daniels right now, I'd be the first one to throw up because I don't drink whiskey at all. But everybody here took a shot of Jack Daniels, you maybe would feel a warm sensation, you might feel a little bit buzzed depending on your tolerance. I would say everybody in this room, if we took that same shot and injected it into your vein, everybody in this room would be intoxicated. So that's why people are going from the snorting, the smoking to the injection. They're getting more high for their dollar. It feels great when you use it. People love that rush. They love that euphoria. One person said it's like the best orgasm you had times 10. And they spend the rest of their time on that substance trying to replicate that high. But it never gets there. It's never as good as the first time. And so they keep trying to use more, and they keep trying to use different, and they keep trying to use more frequently, but they can never attain that first initial high. So they're chasing it for the rest of their addictive life. And it's something that can't be replaced by sex, by hanging out with your kids, by going fishing. You know, things that we all derive pleasure from. To an addict, those things aren't pleasurable because those feelings of pleasure have been replaced by a substance. So for them to have that feeling, they need to inject, they need to smoke, they need to snort, they need to do it on a regular basis. When you use decreased respiratory rate, people who die of a heroin overdose typically drown in their own fluids. Their lungs fill up with fluid, they aspirate fluids. They end up dying because their body can't exchange the carbon dioxide and the oxygen anymore. So they end up drowning. They'll fall asleep and they'll nod off, and they'll end up dying without intervention, and even sometimes with intervention, with the Narcan injections and with some other anti-heroin opiates or anti-opiate antagonists. We can save a lot of people that overdose, but we can't save everybody. And if there isn't somebody there that's trained to use Narcan, if there isn't somebody there that recognizes an overdose, we're not going to save those people, and we're going to have deaths. Every informant that I've talked to has witnessed multiple, sometimes dozens of overdoses. And sometimes it's the same people. We've had people overdose 3 or 4 times with medical intervention within a 2-week period. So try and think of anything in your life that's worth dying for, and it's usually a kid or a wife or a spouse or whatever. There's your country. There's things that you're willing to die for, but if you're dying for an orgasm, like there needs to be an adjustment in our community that people are willing to go to those lengths. There's something more going on there that we need to understand better. Again, the purity levels, unknown tolerance levels. People will go to jail for 3-4 days, and their tolerance level will drop to way before they went in. So now they come out and they're using, let's say they're using 3-4 bins a day. They go to jail for a week. They come out and they try and use 2 bins. That may be way more than their body can handle at that time. So those people are ending up overdosing as well. We've got people that always make sure that they shoot with a buddy. So I'll shoot you up, make sure you don't die, and then when you're done being high for a little bit, you can supervise me. So there's a fly in that ointment. There's people trusting other people who are high to save their lives in case that they get too high and they not often start overdosing. So it's the culture, it's the stigmas. There's people are trying to take safety measures, but sometimes it's just not enough. When people go through withdrawal, this becomes what they're trying to prevent. They're trying to chase that high, but more than anything, they're trying to prevent themselves from feeling like they're gonna die. The worst flu you've ever had, plus some. Nausea, irritable, sleepy, just everything that you can feel crummy about. Somebody going through withdrawals feels that. And there's medications that can help with withdrawals, but a lot of times an addict isn't going to go and seek that medical attention to go and withdraw safely or withdraw painlessly. So, and even people that are medically assisted in their withdrawals are still gonna feel like crap. So they're trying to stave off that sickness and they're trying to get well, and that becomes their cycle. They wanna be high and then they wanna stay well, and they wanna be high and then they wanna stay well. So it's just it's a revolving door that they can't get out of. Just some photographs, paraphernalia. Syringes are big in our community right now. There's a needle exchange in Wausau, which I'll stand on the minority of law enforcement. I support the needle exchange. If people are going to be using heroin, how can we make it safer for them to use? And I guess the way I equate it to is, if everybody remembers back to 8th grade, 9th grade health class, your teacher probably stood up and said, don't have sex, it's bad, it's terrible, nobody should ever have sex again. But the teacher, realizing that people in his class were gonna have sex, said, if you're going to, and I know you are, there's a bowl of condoms in my desk drawer. Make sure that you're safe when you're being risky. So we're trying to prevent the spread of hepatitis. We're trying to prevent the spread of communicable diseases that are transferred by reusing needles, by sharing their equipment. So I support it. However, not everybody disposes of their needles properly. We're finding them in parks and gutters and parking lots, in cars and houses. I talked to a gal last year that bought a house and she found over, I forget what I think it was over 200 needles on the property, in the yard, in the garage, in the gutters, in the bushes, by the foundation. Like her entire property, there's needles laying everywhere. So, and we knew that house was a place where people were using heroin on a regular basis. So it wasn't shocking to me, and that's sad. It should be shocking to find 200 syringes in your property that you just bought. So the bottom right-hand corner is those foil bindles I was talking about. If you imagine a gum wrapper, like probably cut in half and then fold it in on itself as small as you can, that's about the size of a bindle. So our officers are trying to find that on traffic stops. It's hard to do. So we're trying to find larger quantities because it's easier to find. And we're getting the knotted corner baggies and foil bindles, and they're falling out at the emergency room. They're falling out at shopping centers, pharmacies. People are dropping bindles. They're falling out of their bras and their underwears and their pockets. And if my 2-year-old wanders through CVS pharmacy and picks up a bindle and eats it, I'm going to be mad. That's not okay. I have a list of stories that Randy wants me to tell. So along that same note, we were doing a buy last fall, and we just bought an ounce of marijuana from a guy, met with an informant, and I look over to my left in the parking lot that we're in. We happen to be at McDonald's parking lot at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I look to my left, and there's 2 people shooting up in the McDonald's parking lot in a vehicle next to me. It's myself, and hopefully I didn't look like a cop, so I give them that benefit of the doubt. But there's obviously people walking around. I'm trying to be really careful talking to my informant, getting the marijuana, getting the recording devices, doing all those things. And I'm being careful because there's people walking around and I don't want people to know what I'm doing. These people are shooting up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a weekday in a McDonald's parking lot. I take my kids there. I don't want them to find needles and bindles and things like that in the McDonald's parking lot. So it's happening at pharmacies, it's happening in shopping centers, it's happening in parking lots, it's happening in houses. It's happening all over our community, and if we open our eyes and see it, and contact law enforcement. The more calls we get, the more we can have that impact, the more that we can be beneficial. So use the police department to try and get this problem addressed. And it's not going to be the end-all be-all, but if we can have that impact, that might be that day where they say, I'm ready for treatment, I'm ready to kick this habit, I'm ready to do something about it. And without that intervention, they're probably going to keep using. So typically in Wisconsin Rapids, say the clock ready. Typically in Wisconsin Rapids, there'll be groups of users that will pool their money. One person will get voted or have a source in Milwaukee, Chicago, Madison, and they'll drive down with the money, they'll pick up the heroin, they'll come back and they'll split it up with their friends. Kind of the next level up from that is a user will purchase a quantity. They might buy 3.5 grams or 5 grams. They'll come back, they'll take what they need, they can still split out the rest, make their money back, and then they're supporting their habit for free. So if we're talking about somebody that's using a gram a day, $300 a day habit. You know, people would stop for their morning coffee and say, oh, I spent $15 this week, I should probably slow down. They're spending, you know, $200-300 a day. Well, I don't know where that money comes from because not everybody's a functioning addict. Some of them don't have jobs, most of them don't have jobs, they're not getting gainful employment. So that money's coming from somewhere. The best, easiest way for them to make that money is to sell heroin to their friends, sell their prescription medications, do those sorts of things. So kind of the upper level for us is a source of supply with a really good connection down in Milwaukee or a source city. We'll bring back 20, 30, 70, 80 grams, and then they'll sell it to these kind of mid-level dealers who are supporting their habits and selling it to their friends. So in that way, they insulate themselves from law enforcement, from the community, from apprehension. And those are the people that we spend most of our time trying to arrest, because a lot of times they're not addicts, they're profiting from other people's misery. So if we can take them out of our community one at a time, there's always going to be a void, somebody's always going to try and fill that, but for us, if we can get an 80 gram a week dealer out of our community, that's going to have a bigger impact than arresting 20 people that are using a bin or two a day. So if we can take out the supply, we can take out the demand, hopefully, but it's not working so far. A little bit, maybe. What time do I have until? Okay. We'll kind of go through these quick, but this is a heroin map, which is compiled by the Department of Justice, Division of Criminal Investigation, Crime Labs. As the maps progress, it shows the amount of heroin cases in Wisconsin. Our first map is from 2006 to 2008, and we start off with 166 cases in 26 counties. So that seems like a lot. To me, in law enforcement, that seems like a lot, but you think about the state of Wisconsin and the population in our state, and 166 cases isn't a huge percentage of our population. As we progress to the next one, we get to 2008 to 2010. By 2010, we're up to 459 cases in, I think it's 43 counties. So you can see the map is starting to get more populated with cases. So we go to the next one. We're up to 647 cases in 2012 in 56 counties. So almost statewide, there's cases being reported to the crime labs. The next one goes to 2013. 2013, we're at 1,056 cases in 57 counties. And the next one. This map goes through, this 2014 map. So we're up to 1,130 cases in 53 counties. It's a statewide problem. It's happening in Rapids. It's happening in a lot of other jurisdictions. We're choosing to do something about it. We're choosing to get the message out there. We have a problem in our state, but we have a problem in our community. And if we can address it here, we can hopefully figure out the answer. We can figure out the matrix to help other communities do what they can do. The other thing that's important to remember about these maps is not every case is getting submitted to the crime lab. So these numbers, I think, paint a good overall picture of what's happening in our state, but I send heroin to the crime lab when a case is going to trial. If I do my job well enough, my cases shouldn't go to trial. There should be an overwhelming amount of evidence that the defendant says, I'm really busted here. I'll take a plea agreement, I will do whatever. Some of our cases, the individuals will go through drug court, which is an adult diversionary court process in Wood County, where an individual can enter a plea agreement, and then they'll go through treatment. It's court-ordered treatment. If they don't go to the treatment, there's ramifications. And we'll work with these people to try and get them clean, because sending somebody to jail and then having an addict come back out into our community doesn't help anything. But if we can take those people and get them into recovery and get them to recover, then that's another person in our community that hopefully is fighting on our side and not on the other side. So methamphetamine I'm going to talk about real quick. For whatever reason, there's 100 different ideas as why. Methamphetamine is huge in our community right now. I went 7 years without seeing a single crystal of methamphetamine and I stopped a lot of cars. And I might know some of you, and I apologize. But I stopped a lot of cars, and I wanted to get drugs off the street, and that's what I wanted to do, and I didn't find any meth, and I was kind of bummed about that. And now I'm finding meth, and I'm bummed about it, because we're finding it everywhere. We did a buy bust last fall. We got about 3.5 ounces of methamphetamine off of one guy. He was a source of supply to our community. He was arrested. Charges were sent up. I'm not sure where the case is at now, but so going 7 years without finding a single grain of methamphetamine, and then now finding 3.5 ounces, it's here, it's everywhere. We're having a huge influx in our drug treatment court of people that are using methamphetamine and are addicted to methamphetamine. Again, there's that money aspect to it. So an ounce of methamphetamine in a source city, $1,200. That same ounce in Wisconsin Rapids, $3,400. So there's a profit margin to it. It's lucrative to people. It's intriguing to people to try and make that quick money. Every dealer I've talked to said it's not easy. They said the hard part wasn't telling me what they did. The hard part wasn't explaining to their family. The hard part wasn't getting arrested. The hard part was doing this job that they have and providing methamphetamine or heroin or marijuana or whatever. Because they're always looking over their shoulder. They don't trust the people that they're with. Everybody's trying to rob them. Most of them have a sigh of relief when they get caught, because they say, that was stressful. I wasn't worried about getting caught, I was worried about getting chased. So they all think that it's going to happen at some point, and to our credit, I think that's a good thing, but it shouldn't be easier to get arrested than it is to do it in the first place. So we're going to jump ahead to, I want to go through, there's some photographs of methamphetamine in the bottom corners. Again, that super high release of dopamine, feeling of euphoria. Once you get started on it, you want to keep going, you want to keep that high. So a lot of times people will binge for days at a time. They won't sleep for 3-4 days. And then when they do, they crash for a couple days at a time. So if we can keep going to, I want to go through a couple case studies. Prescription pills are obviously a problem. We'll keep going. Marijuana is always going to be around, the legalization of marijuana. Obviously, we're having problems with that from getting it shipped in from other states or driven in from other states, but marijuana is going to be around. It was around. It will always be around. So not that I don't like weed cases, and I'll take them when I can, but they're just getting put on the back burner so we can address the methamphetamine and heroin stuff. Cocaine's always a problem in our community, but again, we're not seeing it as much as we have in the past. It's been replaced by heroin and methamphetamine, so. All right, so this is one of the cases I want to talk about, and I'll run through it briefly. This case was initiated in 2003 by Marshfield Police Department, a member of our task force. Started with controlled buys from a source of supply to the community, utilizing undercover officers and confidential informants. The case went cold. We were no longer able to buy from that source. People had to get arrested, and so it kind of dried up. We wanted to keep working it up to an ultimate source, but we weren't able to do that because the case took a few turns. So it was reopened in 2014 by myself. Started off talking to a girl in a jail about she stole her mom's checks, and she didn't want to get in trouble for that, and so she wanted to cooperate with law enforcement and help out. So we ended up utilizing that individual and undercover officers to do about 5 controlled buys in our city. 2 of which were from our ultimate target, who we had identified in the Marshfield investigation. Target was arrested in 2015, so we started in 13. So 2 years, we worked on this one target. We arrested him in 2015 with about 80 grams of heroin and about 12 grams of crack cocaine. So we can go to the next one. During this case, I wrote approximately 8 court orders, 3 search warrants for residences, phone search warrants, GPS tracking orders, and search warrant for cellular telephone provider information and phone records. Through that, we developed confidential informants through arresting these people. We used those CIs to obtain heroin from Milwaukee, which resulted in numerous search warrants, court orders, and federal prosecution. So kind of the big players as far as the investigatory end of it were Marshall PD, Rapids PD, and then DCI, and then also members of the Central Wisconsin Drug Task Force. We couldn't do what we do without a greater pool of officers to pull from. We seized Maserati, a Porsche, Chevy Tahoe, about 40 pairs of Nike tennis shoes. So the case ended up being successful. It's in federal court right now. People are getting sentenced to some pretty significant jail sentences, but it wouldn't be there if we didn't work cases up. And so when it takes us 2 years to do a case, it's so that we can get here. If I arrested somebody with a bundle of heroin, no fault against our judicial system, that person's probably gonna get probation, deferred prosecution, whatever. If I can use that information and get to the next higher level, I can use their information and get to the next higher level. So it pays dividends to work cases up. We'll switch to the next one. This Portage County conspiracy case is something that I'm really proud of for our task force. It originated in 2014 and indictments began in 2015. So we began buying heroin from a low-level user dealer. And when we arrested that person was like, yo, you guys are missing the bigger picture. It's way bigger than this. I can help you dismantle this. And we're like, all right, fine, whatever. So we started doing buys. We did 36 controlled buys in this case. So that's a huge allocation of resources to one investigation. But again, knowing the outcomes and knowing what it could be, we were willing to invest that, and our management was willing to let us invest it. 35 court orders were written. A court order, anything from a GPS tracker to a cell phone records to a search warrant for residence. On a good day, I can rip one out in probably 3 hours. So 35 search warrants, court orders, 3 hours of crack, that's a huge investment of time by the officers involved in this case. 63 interviews, and I'm sure it's up over 80 or 90 now, but you're talking 3, 4, 5, 6 hour interviews per person. Multiple interviews with the same people, trying to establish a baseline of who's doing what, and that's time consuming. Putting all the pieces together, it's easy to go and buy dope. I can go and buy dope in 20 minutes if I wanted to. Putting the pieces together and forming a case is what takes time. It involved 3 brothers from Milwaukee and one of their associates. They began trafficking heroin in Portage Wood and Wapaka counties. 166 named subjects. We identified 166 people in this group of people that was selling heroin in those 3 counties. 33 subjects with strong ties to Wisconsin Rapids, including 3 of the top tier dealers and 3 of the top tier conspirators and 8 of the top tier dealers. So this is a Portage County case. That's where it started out. But it's our people. Our people are driving over there. Our people are supplying heroin over there. Our people are facilitating these transactions. And so that's why the task force works. And that's why Kurt and Randy invest into me and to putting into the task force. They help me out, I help them out. It's all our problem. We attributed over 7.5 kilos of heroin between May of 2014 and August 2015. So a kilogram is 1,000 grams. So $300 a gram, 1,000 grams, times 7, it's a lot of money. I'm not in math, or I'd be in a different profession, but I know what a lot of money sounds like, and these guys are making a lot of money. And the top tier people were not using. They were just profiting on other people's misery. And so without this case, without all the foundation that we did over that year, we wouldn't be able to arrest the top people because they weren't getting their hands dirty. It's currently in federal court. One girl just got sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Another person got 3 years in federal prison. Cases that we would get a year probation and maybe a year in jail, we're getting 10, 15 years out because we were able to build this case to where it is today. Some of the shocking things for me, one Rapids dealer admitted to providing over 1,200 grams to over 32 customers in Wisconsin Rapids. This is a Portage County case, so it's not our problem, right? But there's a Rapids person who was facilitating transactions with them and then supplying our community. So it's all interwoven, it's all connected, and 1,200 grams to 32 customers in Wisconsin Rapids. And this person didn't come into the conspiracy until later. So one defendant indicated that once Rapids got on board, they began sourcing their heroin from Chicago because Milwaukee couldn't keep up with their heroin demand. So the city of Milwaukee couldn't keep up with their demand for heroin, so they started sourcing it from Chicago, which is a bigger source city. That's Wisconsin Rapids, and that's to me is alarming. So they've got nothing to lose. These people that are offering these statements are telling us the truth because it's going to be to their benefit. We got approximately 6 known overdoses linked to this investigation. None of them were fatal, but not for immediate medical intervention. It could have been. So I think that's about it. So we're looking at 20 years. One of the guys is looking at, I think, 30 years in federal prison on a drug case, which for a drug investigator is awesome. We're not seeing those sentences. So some people are getting 3-year minimum mandatories. So this is why we work investigations for lengthy periods of time. So this is a schematic of the individuals involved in this conspiracy case. So I took the liberty of getting out my 3rd grade art skills, and I put red boxes and X's around the people from Rapids. So these are the people in the conspiracy. People with red boxes on them are people from Rapids. Either they live in Rapids, or their girlfriend lives in Rapids, or somebody with strong ties to Wisconsin Rapids is represented in this chart. So that's all the red boxes, and those are the defendants that I talked about earlier. So this case is Portage County, Waupaca County, Milwaukee, Wood County, different jurisdictions within those areas, 7 grams or 7 kilos of heroin attributed to this group of people. Were it not for a ton of hours and a ton of investigation putting all the pieces together, we could probably scratch 90% of those people off of the arrested individuals. So because we put the time in, because we worked our case up, we're able to do a lot more good. I appreciate your guys' time, but I'm gonna stick around afterwards if you guys have questions. If anybody has any questions that they have a burning need to ask.
A few minutes if you want.
Okay. If not, I can tell horror stories too.
Nate, if you would just touch on the property crimes, how it's affected Brian.
So like I said earlier, in order to fund this addiction, it's super expensive. And people are not looking to go through the classified ads and say, where can I make $300 a day? Where can I make $1,200 a week? Where can I make $5,000 a week so I can support my heroin addiction? They're walking through their neighborhoods going, he's got a nice GPS in his car. He's got, a new DeWalt toolbox sitting in his garage. They're pawning things at pawn shops. They're selling things outright. They're trading things for heroin. Talked to a person the other day, stole a check from mom, went to Home Depot, bought two cordless power drills, traded one to a guy for meth, returned the other one 11 minutes after they bought it, and got the money, took that money, went down to a heroin house, and bought a gram of heroin. So the retail thefts, the property crimes, the thefts from buildings, thefts from vehicles are spiking in a gigantic fashion because people are trying to support this habit. And you can't do it on a normal job. And if you've got a felony record, you're not going to get a normal job probably. And so how do you support this habit? Our prostitution it's shocking. A small town like Wisconsin Rapids, we shouldn't have the amount of prostitution that we do. So people that are engaging in the use of narcotics, specifically heroin, methamphetamine, high dollar narcotics, they're funding that in one way or another. And to these people, getting high is more important than their reputation, it's more important than their safety, it's more important than anything else in their life. And so they're willing to sacrifice their body, sacrifice their morals, sacrifice everything that they have to try and get that next high. So they'll steal from their parents, they'll steal from their relatives, they'll steal from their friends, they'll steal from each other. They'll sell their bodies, they'll do anything they can to try and fund that addiction. And it's affecting, it sounds cliche, but it's affecting the moral fiber of our community. And that's why we want to get upstream, we want to get to these kids, we want to try and affect the long-term outcome of our community so that we don't have these things happening. Randy went to a presentation where by treating one addict, they calculated he was doing what, 3 or 4 burglaries a day? So 3 or 4 burglaries a day, one person. By getting that person treatment and preventing them from being an addict, how many burglaries are they preventing over the next 10 years? How many burglaries, how much property crime are they preventing over the next 10 years? Are they gonna outpace their call volume by taking that one addict off the street? What if we took 10 addicts off the street? What if we got 20 people into rehab and prevented this? How many families would be impacted on that? And I'm not gonna ask you guys to raise your hands, but you're all here for a reason, you all care for a reason. I would bet, just based on groups that I've talked to in the past, that everybody in here, if you think hard, there's somebody within probably 1 or 2 jumps from your personal life that's addicted by heroin or addicted to heroin, or their life is immediately impacted by heroin use. It's touching everybody in our community, whether you think so or not. And I think if people go through their mental Rolodex, it's not like the 7 steps of Kevin Bacon or whatever, but you know somebody who knows a kid, or you know somebody who has a kid that's being affected by heroin abuse. You know somebody who's got a husband or a spouse or that's being affected by this problem. So it affects us all, and the further downstream that we, or the further upstream that we can get to try and prevent it, the better off we're all going to be. Yes, ma'am.
So you mentioned prevention, obviously, is one of the pillars, and specifically targeting youth as you're starting to see this school. Are the representatives from the school on that monthly group that's meeting? And if so, like what sort of
Yes.
initiatives are taking place in the school districts, and at what ages are they starting?
There is somebody in this room that could probably answer that question, but I'm not going to put them on the spot. I know that we're getting, our school resource officers and our school liaisons are getting involved in the schools. They've been involved in the schools, but we're addressing it in a different tact, I guess. Working with Human Services, obviously we have the drug and endangered children complaints, and we're trying to address those kids and try and prevent them from, I guess, expanding their clique and their circle of users. Kids are gonna do stupid stuff. We know that. We all did when we were kids. But with the addictive nature of these drugs, trying to have more information in the schools, trying to have a better relationship with our school resource officers, with our faculty, within our school district. I think that we're trying to address it as a community approach, that we're trying to help these people rather than locker searches every Thursday or however. Does that answer the question?
Maybe the school people are better. I mean, other than like one-time presentations, I mean, I know you go into the school and obviously talk to the kids. Is there stuff happening on an ongoing basis to educate like the junior high or middle school age? You started just to do like your health curriculum?
Health and guidance curriculum, and it's making healthy choices, safe behaviors, age appropriate, and it increases as you go up.
And we've gotten some really good information from those informational meetings. We'll have kids come to faculty or to our school resource officers and say, my mom's got a bunch of these little pens with orange caps on them, and she lays around and she says not to touch them. A kindergartner shouldn't know what a syringe is unless their mom or dad's diabetic, and I can understand that, but we're talking about corner baggies and 30 people coming to their house this week and being up all hours of the night. That's not okay. And so we're getting a lot of good information, and then we're trying to address it from the top down. So we get to the parents and try and address it that way. So, yes, ma'am.
So when you get that information and kids are in these houses, is there anything you can do with the kids, or is it, or do they just stay in that position?
Totally a lost cause. We don't do anything. So when we do a search warrant or when we do an investigation, I forward that to my friends at Human Services, and we try and work those cases together. So those kids get put into, sometimes they'll get put in foster care, sometimes they'll go to a relative. We'll get them out of that environment as soon as we possibly can, and then start working on, we'll do therapy with them, we'll do different programs to try and get that child's life back to a normal track. Sometimes parents lose their kids, but they're making choices that prevent them from being good parents. So I know you guys don't appreciate taking kids away, but it's the lesser of two evils. So if we can get that kid into a good environment and then set their path straight, then we're going to do that. And so we have continuing cases with children. Some kids get caseworkers from the time they're born until they're 18 years old. So we work with them as much as we can, but there's only so much to go around. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
What else can we do, you know?
I'm sorry, what?
What else can we do to help our friends spreading the word that we have a problem? I mean, I think a lot of people know that. And, you know, I have 2 young girls. You know, I'm terrified of them growing up. And, you know, what can we do to prevent this?
If there was an easy answer, I'd be out of a job. So I'm not going to share the secret, but
What could I do?
the best thing you can do as a parent, as somebody involved with anybody in our youth and our community, is be there for them. There's a huge correlation between kids that have a positive role model in their lives and their later use of controlled substances or risky behavior. So being there for those kids, and I know that I'm not trying to offend anybody because I do it too, but you see that kid that you look at him and go, that kid's got a miserable life, somebody should do something about it. And you walk away. Because obviously the next person is going to do something about it. So if you see that kid, if you see that adult, if you see anybody in our community that you think needs attention, call law enforcement, call Human Services, contact somebody that is going to have the necessary leverage to look into their life, to look into what's going to help them out. Because it's one thing to see a kid at a playground, you know, playing with a needle. Obviously, I think everybody in this room would step in and say, don't do that. But to see the kid that shows up for school every day tired and sad, and, you know, a lot of us wouldn't do anything about that because we hope the next person would. We have to be that next person. We have to step into that kid's life and say, how can I help you? Or who can I contact? I think this kid needs help. And even if it's vague, we know who these kids are, but we're waiting for something to trigger that reaction that we can get those services involved, that we can take them away from that bad house, that we can offer them services, that we can get them into counseling. So a lot of our information comes from tips from the community, comes from anonymous reporters to Human Services. So step up and be there for the kids in our community, be there for your own kids. There's so many people that they don't know where their kids are at. They don't know who their kids' friends are. They don't know, you know, when I grew up, and maybe my dad was over the top, but he knew all my friends, who their parents were, where they worked, what their address was, what their phone number was. He knew what they drove. He knew where I was. So there was a network of parents that looked out for each other's kids. We don't have that anymore. And whether it's a generational thing, whether it's a societal impact, I don't know. But I know that there's always going to be problems, but the more we can band together as a community. I got spanked by my neighbor when I was like 7. You know, I can't imagine somebody doing that. We'd get called on that. But that's how kids are brought up. If you saw somebody else's kid doing something dumb, you'd address it. We don't have that anymore because people are scared to step in and intervene. So at least call somebody. If you do nothing else, call somebody and try and be a mentor for your kids' friends. Everybody in here knows that they've got their kid's one friend that has a terrible life. Invite them over for supper. Take them to church with you. Take them out skiing. Take them fishing. Do something for that kid to show them that there's a better way. Because these kids that are being brought up in these houses don't know a different way. They're brought up in an environment, that's what they're used to, that's what they're gonna do when they're adults. Yes?
People that are seeking treatment, what does that look like?
It's problematic currently. I would say drug court is probably one of our best treatment tools that we have in our community. Unfortunately, there's not enough services even within our drug court to address all the needs of our client base. There's a huge deficit in treatment facilities and treatment providers in our state. It's like that nationwide, so I'm not trying to say Wisconsin's terrible, but if somebody wants to check into rehab, you've got a very small window that I want to get into treatment and I want to do it now, and if I don't do it now, I'm going to be sick and I'm going to go back to using. The problem is that person calls up L.E. Phillips up in Eau Claire, they call up wherever, I need to get into rehab, I need to get into treatment, I need to get into detox, do you have any beds? Nope, we're booked out. Rats. So then that person is stuck in that same cycle. They can't get the momentum to kick out of that cycle. So unless somebody's got an inheritance from their great uncle for millions and millions of dollars and can start a new rehab facility here in our community, we just have to be there for those people. We're trying to start a peer mentoring program to have somebody for these people to talk to, so that if they're thinking about relapsing, that they've got somebody to talk to and somebody to go to. But our services are lacking, and so we try to help as many as we can. It's that starfish thing. You know, we help the ones we can, and we hope the other ones are still there and not all dried up and crusty by the time we get to them. Yes, ma'am.
As far as the lack of treatment,
Yep.
you're talking about facilities. If it's such a large problem within this community in Marshall, I'm sure, how come like St. Joseph's Hospital, they closed down their AOPA? I don't know about Riverview personally, but you know, like, why are these facilities that could start making a difference going away and the problem is just growing?
I'm not sure. I would imagine a lot of it comes down to funding. And if you have to cut your cancer treatment or you have to cut an AODA, I don't envy those people because they have to make decisions on a daily basis as far as we only have so much money, right? You only get so much money from your employer. Your car breaks down, am I gonna fix my car or am I gonna put food on the table? You know, so a lot of it comes down to there's just not enough money to support the services that we need.
And I think insurance companies, if you think back 20 years, it was pretty standard you'd go to treatment for 28 days. In more recent years, if you got 5 days of insurance, that was pretty good. So
Yep.
I don't know if it became less profitable for those facilities. So I'm assuming if insurance isn't willing to pay what they used to.
Yep. You know, and one of the things with the opiate addictions is a 28-day rehab stay, a 28-day dry out period is not enough. People need 90, 120, 240-day programs to get on the right track to be successful. And so to offer a 5-day rehabilitation it's not effective.
Are there other programs for people that maybe did have a 5-day drive, like available throughout this community?
They're available, but they're not available enough. There's not enough staff to address the amount of mental health and addiction issues within our community. So I forget what it is now on 12th Street South, Unified. They're telling people we can have an appointment in like 2 weeks. That's where our client base is at. We have this much mental health AODA problems in our community that we're booking 2 weeks out. So thank you very much.
Let's give one more round of applause to these guys. Just one thing I wanted to touch on, I believe it was this young lady here asked, what can I do or what can we do to try and make a difference? One way you can make a difference is supporting the Boys and Girls Club. We provide a safe place for kids. We have great adult mentors, help kids make better decisions. Every national statistic, every study that I've read will show that in a community where there is a Boys and Girls Club, high school graduation rates are higher,
drug use rates among young kids are much lower. So by supporting the club, we can really help combat this problem and try to get in front of it. As Kurt said, we can't arrest our way out of this problem. And believe me, these guys do a great job. I've been doing defense work for many years. I know there's other lawyers here that do it. The drug enforcement guys are really on top of things. But simply arresting them and putting them away is to do it all. So support the club, and thanks for coming.